Okay, welcome again. By now, you know that anthropologists have a holistic approach. They study culture by taking history into account, but also the environment, psychology, economic developments, and so on. In this short lecture, we will show how an anthropologist can use other aspects, other factors, to understand more about discussions on immigration and cultural diversity. In fact, we show how an anthropologist can use knowledge of history to understand views in society. Let's go back to Maria again, for the last time in this series on diversity. She is living in the Netherlands for a long time, and the question is, does she now belong to the group called the Dutch? And we have already discussed that there are many different views on this in Dutch society. Let's explore a few of these views. Some Dutch people might say, yes, of course. Maria has lived here for a long time, she speaks Dutch fluently, has Dutch citizenship, so she is Dutch. She's welcome, she's one of us. Other people may say, yes, she's one of us, she's an equal member of society, she is still ethnic Filipino or Filipino Dutch. But that doesn't matter, because our society is multicultural and she's part of our multicultural society. And then there are people who say, actually, yes, of course, she is a Dutch citizen, but she is still actually not completely Dutch, because she is Filipino. She is from somewhere else. So she might have citizenship, but she is not a real Dutch person. Some of those people might think that a multicultural society is not a very good idea. And then finally there are people who would say, she doesn't belong here, she's not from here. She might have gotten citizenship, but actually we should not admit immigrants. As you can see, there are quite a few views, different views. And it's important to realize that even though immigrants might get Dutch citizenship and have a job and be legally Dutch, not everybody will accept them as completely Dutch or a full member of society. The first assignment. We discussed different views on whether immigrants can become part of society or nation state they migrate to. Have you read or heard about such views in your daily life? From people around you, from social media or TV? Describe a few of those views and notice the differences between these views. So there are many different views on whether immigrants can become part of society, they can become a full member of the nation. And you know probably from social media, from Facebook, from television, that some of those views are very divisive. People debate them and they never agree. So how can we use anthropology to understand where these views come from? We'll have a look. As I said, anthropology is a holistic study. We study those views, but an anthropologist would say, okay, we know there are different views, let's start with history. Maybe history can teach us something that makes us understand those views a bit better. So, history. History shows that views on a national group, on who belongs to the national group, who can be part of a national group, these views have been strongly influenced by views of the nation state in the 19th century. You might know that the current system of the nation states, so the nation states as they have developed since then and as they are right now, they developed actually from the beginning of the 19th century. Before that, nation states did not exist as they exist now. Before the 19th century we had states, empires and rulers like kings, emperors, princes. And the borders of these empires and these states changed quite a lot. They changed because of wars or because princes and kings were marrying and they changed their borders. And this all changed especially in the late 18th and the beginning of the 19th century. But things had changed in the 19th century, not least because of the French Revolution in 1789. People started thinking that they should rule themselves and that the old rulers, kings, emperors, princes should give up their power, or at least most of their power. But when people started thinking about that they wanted to rule themselves, they also had the question, but who do we rule? Who are we? What unites us? So if we want to rule ourselves in our nation state, who are we? Who can belong to this nation state? And people had very different answers to this question. One very popular answer, which was a direct result of the French Revolution, was the answer that every person who wanted to become a citizen of the nation state and who wanted to take up the obligations and the rights that comes with citizenship, this person would be accepted as part of the nation state. So the basis for the people and the thing that you would unite a nation state was the free choice of citizens to together take responsibility to govern themselves. Another answer, also very important and influential, also with roots in the 19th century, was the answer that what unites people in a nation state is the fact that they have a common history or a common ancestry or a common culture. The problem, however, is that most people in most of those new nation states did not have a common culture, not even a common language or a common history, because of migration, for example. So, the second assignment. Describe in your own words which two views about a nation state developed in the 19th century, and describe how those views are different. So, despite the fact that in those new nation states people actually did not share very much, they had different cultures, different languages, many politicians were thinking that this idea of having something like culture or language or history in common would be very powerful to unite people. So they were thinking, if we can make people believe that they have a common history, if we can make people believe that they have a common culture, it will create a strong bond and our nation state will become stronger because people will feel that they are one. So these politicians started to work to make every citizen speak the same language, for example. And some politicians also started to make citizens believe they had a common culture and a common history. And this means, of course, that they also made people start to believe that their nation state was very different from other nation states. Some politicians went even further. They made people believe that their nation state was superior to other nation states. And these politicians realized that, for example, the idea that other nation states could even be a threat or are inferior, those ideas were very powerful to unite people. From here, it's a very small step to racism, as you might realize. And if you study history, you will see that those ideas about nation states being different, being superior, are very close to racism. And the development of racism and the development of this view of the nation state is intertwined. In current discussions, you can recognize these views. You can still see that quite a few people think that you belong to the nation state when you have the same culture, when you have the same ethnicity, or when you have the same history. This clearly is a view that developed in the 19th century. And others still have this view which goes back to the French Revolution. You belong to the national group, to the nation state, when you are prepared to take responsibility as a citizen with all the obligations and rights that come with citizenship. The third assignment. So we discussed how anthropologists can study differences between views on immigrants. Describe in your own words why it is useful in such studies to take historical developments into account. So hopefully you realize now that it's possible to start understanding some very polarized debates, like the one about which immigrants can belong to the nation states and which cannot, that you can understand those debates by studying historical developments. And it's an important aspect of anthropology, that you just not only study the views people have and the habits people have, but also circumstances in which those views have developed. Thank you.